Hola, les habla René Salgado, presidente de la iniciativa Empresomos Centroamérica. Nos pueden encontrar en empresomos.org. Bienvenidos a este intercambio de ideas sobre incubación y aceleración de empresas, que es parte de nuestro programa Empresomos Conectividad Emprendedora en Centroamérica, que estamos implementando en conjunto con CLATS de INCAE y CAMTIC. Este diálogo se enfoca en componentes críticos de dichos procesos e ilumina la importancia de los mismos en la ideación y creación de nuevas entidades y en la innovación en las empresas. Contamos con un panel de calidad y bien experimentado en estos temas, con la participación de James Thompson y Marcelo Lebendiker como presentadores y Paul Fervoy como moderador. James es vicepresidente asociado de Innovación en la Universidad de Notre Dame, Indiana, director del Ideas Center de dicha universidad, con casi 15 años de experiencia en temas vinculados a la incubación en biotecnología, además de la creación y gestión de empresas y desarrollo de negocios, habiendo sido fundador de 4 empresas en esta área. Marcelo es fundador y director de Parque Tec en Costa Rica, que se ha expandido recientemente a México. Parque Tec es una incubadora y aceleradora especializada en tecnologías de información y comunicación. Marcelo es además fundador del prestigioso El Financiero de Costa Rica, el primero de su naturaleza en el país. Es senador del World Business Angel Investment Fund y fundador de Inversiones, una red de inversionistas ángeles de Costa Rica. Paul Fervoy es cofundador de Extendo, empresa que se especializa en tecnologías de computación en la nube, brindando apoyo técnico a entidades de salud, finanzas y comercio con oficinas en Costa Rica, México y Estados Unidos. Es presidente de la Cámara de Tecnología de Información y Comunicación, CAMTIC, profesor adjunto de la Universidad LID y mentor de emprendedores en la región. El evento se inicia con una presentación de 10 a 15 minutos de James Thompson sobre el Ideas Center de la Universidad de Notre Dame, seguida por Marcelo Lebendiker, quien se referirá a procesos de incubación y aceleración en Parque Tec, como preámbulos al intercambio de ideas moderado por Paul Fervoy. Aunque el video de la conversación en inglés contiene subtítulos en este idioma, estos pueden ser configurados para ser leídos en español presionando el botón subtítulo y haciendo la correspondiente selección. Esperamos que este diálogo sea de provecho para toda nuestra audiencia. And thank you very much, everyone. And James has the floor.
Marvelous. Rene, is it possible to share my screen just so I can go over
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me go ahead. Yeah, you can share the screen now.
Marvelous. Thank you so much. So what I would like to do is I just wanted to talk a little bit about strengthening the innovation ecosystem in Latin America through technology transfer. I'm a visual person, so I just like to have some slides that help. So I want to talk a little bit about the model of building an innovation ecosystem that we've developed at the University of Notre Dame. So think of us at the University of Notre Dame, the Ideas Center. We are the tech transfer office. We're student entrepreneurship. We're a master's program. And what we're here to do is make an impact. We are here to take technologies from the students, the faculty, the staff, and we are advancing them through a process so that we can then generate companies. So I want to go over what this looks like, what our model looks like. So starting off with this, I want to start at the university, we have research. So the University of Notre Dame does $240 million a year in research. And then we also have 300 students who see a problem and they try to work on it. Well, this is interesting because if we've worked with students don't necessarily have an invention. They have a problem. They see a problem. They see a need. So we work with about 300 students. And then out of that, we have out of the 240 million in research expenditures from our faculty, we get about 100 inventions a year and about another 30 inventions from the students. 70 inventions from the faculty, 30 inventions from the students, so about 100 inventions total. We then go through a process where we evaluate the risks and the benefits of the technology, and we find about 3/4 of those technologies proceed. And then we go through a process that we affectionately call the commercialization engine, in which we validate the problem, we develop or then produce the invention, we take that invention out to the market to confirm that, yes, the market likes that invention, and then we recruit the president. In the case of the students are the leaders of the company. And we start about 30 companies a year, anywhere from 28 to 32 companies. Now, for a select number of companies, we then recruit the board of directors, and we help the companies to raise money. And we help about 10 companies a year. And these companies are raising anywhere from $250,000 to $5 million. Well, the highest was $25 million in a rally. So, why start companies? Why are we starting companies? Well, it's all really based on the golden rule. The person who has the gold makes the rules, and the people who have the gold are existing companies. So it's really important. Existing companies want technologies with sales. And in addition, there's this really interesting situation in which companies would like more profit. Their bonuses are based off these large corporations and mid-sized corporations. Their bonuses are based off of the profit and loss. So they're reducing R&D. And they found that acquisitions don't hit your profit and loss statement. So they're encouraged to cut R&D and to do acquisitions. Other key points: startups feed growth in the world, inventions are early and cost money to develop. So this leads us for an opportunity to start companies, for people to build the product, establish sales, and then they can sell to a company and make money. So what we've done at the University of Notre Dame is we have combined process with people in a process that we affectionately call the commercialization engine. So we talked about risk assessment. We do our risk assessment where we look at the risk versus the benefits. We call it the two-stroke. There's 11 core categories. Then we do our de-risking. We talked about problem validation, market validation, technical development, and then we also make sure that we have a financial strategy associated with it. And then the final stage, this enterprise acceleration, that's where we form the company, recruit the entrepreneur, recruit the board, and we bring in the investment. And this is an organized process with standard operating procedures. And we are going through a process now in which we are preparing videos that explain the process and also can be used to train our entrepreneurs, to train our interns, but can also be used for other universities if they want this information. So our model then of an innovation ecosystem is you have inventors that are identifying problems and coming up with solutions. You have lots of companies that are hiring people at a high salary, high density of entrepreneurs, large number of investors that are funding companies being acquired with a large industrial base. That's what we've got. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to get to. So what does that look like? It starts with the researchers identifying problems and coming up with solutions. They then develop and disclose the invention. The university helps to de-risk the product to recruit an entrepreneur, start the company, recruit the board. Investors put money into the company. The company then hires employees, which then sells products and makes money. And then the company sells, and the employees become the next generation of entrepreneurs. The founders of the company become the next generation of investors. So now we're generating investors, we're generating entrepreneurs, and you're providing incentives for the inventors to continue to invent. So here in gray is what the faculty and the staff work on. And then here in green, this is what we at the Idea Center at the university do. We have processes and people that focus on everything here in green. So you're inputting people and process, research dollars, entrepreneurs, investors, and these subject matter experts, and you're outputting more entrepreneurs, more investors, more research dollars, and this larger base of operations for these large companies. So I just, finally, I was going to give you just a couple of slides, a few slides on the impact. We've started 172 companies. This is the breakout of student companies, faculty versus alums. We have a 56% active rate a year into it, so a 1-year active rate. With faculty startups, 66% are active, students, 49%. Over 5 years, that decreases for students, but I think you would expect that. For students, we see this in part as experiential, more than just impact, whereas for the faculty, 53% survival rate. This is actually fascinating. We were started in 2017, and you see this exponential increase in the amount of investment that's been put into our companies. Last year at $86.6 million. In addition, product sales. We did see a decrease due to COVID. However, last year, a major increase in sales. It is important to note that 124 million of that is attributed to just one company. Number of full-time jobs dramatically increasing. Number of part-time jobs. The average salary of those jobs has been increasing. Number of full-time jobs in our ecosystem is also increasing, as well as part-time jobs, but this is something that we're really trying to work on. The number of jobs in our ecosystem in Indiana, in our state, as a percent of the total jobs has been decreasing over time. There's some challenges there, remote work, and COVID did have a major impact in that. So anyway, that's I thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
So let's get some responses from Marcelo. Marcelo, you've heard the Idea Center proposition of why and how they do incubation within a university setting. What was your take on this? What do you see as opportunities, drawbacks, and how is it applicable to our reality here in Central America?
Well, thank you, Paul. Wonderful presentation, James. Of course, thank you, Empezamos and René Salgado. Yes, I wonder if when I heard about your presentation, James, I wonder what is the difference in our environment, in our culture, in Latin America, that we can approach in some way. And you know, I think that first of all, there is a matter of, I call it the culture of trust. You know, there are many countries. I used to live in Israel for 17 years, and when we are going to the army there, and to the war, they teach you to trust in the people that are behind you. You cannot go to the war by yourself. So when you exit the army, that culture of trust trickles down to the whole society. So the culture is based on trust. And it's important in order to foster entrepreneurship. Since when I came to Latin America, I found that the culture is of mistrust. There is a gap. There is a huge gap of mistrust. It's one of the key elements that you did not mention, because of course you have not that problem. Yes. So when I am talking about that problem, we are talking about a human approach of a dimension of entrepreneurship, not just a process of market fit and how to go to market. Because in our environment, if we have that gap of mistrust, it will be very difficult for us to go and move forward on the value chain through the market.
Can I ask you, Marcelo,
yeah,
when you think about trust in the context that you're referring to, who does that trust Where does the mistrust lie? Is it between entrepreneurs and investors? Is it between sort of other actors in the ecosystem? Where do you see that there's not a trust that allows for an entrepreneurial ecosystem to function?
So first, we should define trust. Trust, I think, it's the conjunction between your compromise and your action.
Okay, so maybe we don't trust the entrepreneur to actually do what they say they're going to do.
And vice versa. And vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a key question that we should approach in Latin America, since we should build in our incubator what we call an index of trust. It's so powerful that we needed to build that, and the index of trust in our case says that when it's lower than 50%, I don't care if your name is Bill Gates or Elon Musk, I will not trust on you. It means that more than 50% of the time, you didn't execute what you compromised to. So that is my first take on the differences between incubators in other countries, in Europe, in the States, in Israel, in Singapore, and processing on entrepreneurship, on incubators and accelerators in Latin America. And of course, that leads also to some kind of success rate or failure rate. So that's my take, Paul, on your comment.
Let me phrase the question then for James. So Marcelo's talking about an ecosystem in which entrepreneurs are not necessarily coming out of a university setting. So we don't have this very controlled environment like you do at the Idea Center. So before we talk about the Idea Center, entrepreneurship more generally in the United States also does not necessarily rise out of university settings. So where does it come from? If it doesn't come out of that setting, where does it normally come from? And when it does arise, how is trust enabled by the ecosystem in that environment of the United States?
Right. So great question. There's two parts to this, to the question. Number one is, where does entrepreneurship normally reside? And then what does that look like at Notre Dame with the Idea Center, given that we are focused on building entrepreneurs in the university environment? So where it normally resides is it's residing out in the community, and you're reliant on the density of three basic groups: the entrepreneurs, the inventors, and the investors. And you're relying on there being a high enough number in a limited geographic area that those individuals will be able to meet, to connect, and coalesce businesses out of it. The inventors are identifying the needs, the problems, coming up with the solutions. They're then partnering with people to help them to start the company. Now, what the data has shown, the research has shown, though, that around the world, those innovation ecosystems where you have a large number of these three parties usually center around or close to a tier 1 research university. That's what's helping to create the density, whether they're facilitated, the creation of them, the generation of them, the education of these three are facilitated or not. They're occurring around these universities. So I'm thinking, think University of Colorado, Boulder, around Boulder. Think University of Utah, Brigham Young University around Salt Lake City, Provo, Utah. Austin, Texas, with the University of Texas, Austin. So
can I ask quickly then, what do those universities have in common? Is it because they're research universities?
Yes. They're tier one research universities with research expenditures that are above $200 million a year, at least in the United States. And you can extend it to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Florida in Gainesville. So if you look at the active innovation ecosystems, they're with the research university. And now many of these universities didn't facilitate the interactions of the three groups. And when I was recruited to the University of Notre Dame, I came from the University of Utah, and it was really nice to be in an ecosystem where we had a large concentration of all three of these parties. That was really helpful. When I came here to Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana, we did not have a high concentration of those. So now I'm going to shift. So where they're found now is in locations around a tier one research university, larger metropolitan areas, and it's all related to density. Now, when I came to South Bend, Indiana 6 years ago, we did not have an active ecosystem. There was not a lot of trust in inventors, not a lot of trust in entrepreneurs. So we had to facilitate it. The Idea Center, Notre Dame, we had to create a process to do it. When I started, investors did not like to come around. They weren't interested. Paul, you were going to say something?
I was going to ask, was Notre Dame already one of those top tier research universities? No. Okay, so you actually had to create a few of the pieces in order for this dynamic to work. Because you had mentioned you have to have entrepreneurs, inventors, and investors. You didn't have the investors. You didn't even have the inventors because you didn't have a research-focused university. So what did you have? How did you do it?
So what had happened, we were fortunate that the university, we started out with research expenditures around 160 million when I was here. And a few years before that, they were at 88, 89 million. So that their research expenditures were starting to increase.
Okay, so they were already closing that gap, let's say.
Yep, exactly. So it was a perfect time for us to come in. And then what we did is we trained entrepreneurs. We didn't find entrepreneurs in the community.
Okay, that's the student body, is that right?
That's the
entrepreneur. Right. So you're taking the faculty and you're mentoring and creating an entrepreneurial class, so to speak, who wants to go and look at what's going on in research to see how they can take it to the market.
That's exactly right. So with entrepreneurs, you can either recruit them or you grow them. At the beginning, I couldn't recruit them. We couldn't recruit them. It was very difficult to recruit them. And I'm not putting down this community. It's just, this is a community that focuses on manufacturing. That's what they've done for centuries. And it's hard to get them out of that mode. We didn't have a lot of trust from the investors. And we were told there were not investors in this community, that there is no investors even in the Notre Dame community. Well, what we did was we had to then, this is that next key piece of it, we had to establish some metric of trust. And we did that with people and process. People and process. So if you input an invention and you input good people, you're going to output a company, an investable company. And we found that over time, those startups that we created had a better chance of success. They started getting investment, they started making sales, and it started breeding it, reinforcing this trust. Hey, I can trust you. Now, I'm also acknowledging we don't have the cultural issue that Marcelo, you were mentioning. But many people didn't believe we could do it. And now we do have regularly qualified entrepreneurs coming to us looking for opportunities. We also have a network of 400 investors, mostly angels, who have invested in our deals. And we have 2 funds that have been created and another 2 that are in the process of being created around our deal flow, primarily because of what our startups have done over the last 6 years.
Great. Let me go back then to Marcelo. So you heard in James' remarks that they do also have a trust indicator. It has to do with people and process. So trust is a part of the solution. But before that, they had to have 3 elements in their ecosystem: the entrepreneur, the inventor, the investor. So when you think about this region, what are we missing in our ecosystem? Do we have the density of those three pieces, or like the Idea Center at Notre Dame, do we have to create, artificially inseminate the creation of some of those pieces to the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think we should create that because we are lacking of the university pipeline of researchers with the entrepreneurial mindset. So the problem that we have in our countries is that the researchers and R&D and so on are for basic research or just for grants and so on, but they have not that kind of entrepreneurial mindset. So
but can I push back on that, Marcelo? I think what James is saying is they've separated the entrepreneur and the inventor. They're two different entities. In our model, we have it as if it's one. We expect the inventor to be the entrepreneur.
yeah.
And that doesn't sound like it's necessarily the case. So
No,
how do we?
I was pointed out and meaning the problem that we have in terms of universities, not in terms of inventors, small entrepreneurs. So we cannot count on universities as a big pipeline on those same issues that James addressed, because we have not that kind of pipeline.
So we're definitely not getting the inventor pipeline because we're not research universities first.
Yes.
We could create the entrepreneurs, and there
Yes.
have been initiatives to do that,
Yes.
but then they would have to come up with the ideas, because where are they going to get the idea, right?
Yeah. So that's the common problem. Yes, that's the common option that we have entrepreneurs. But what I wanted to emphasize is that in our case, universities are not playing an important role in the technological entrepreneurial ecosystem. That is a very important issue that we need to address. Because the university has, of course, resources, money, and they have also a lot of academic people that are researchers and so on, and also they have potential entrepreneurs. So they have the whole ecosystem in their hands. We need to look for different parts of the puzzle in order to make that ecosystem. It's a different effort that we need to do.
So James, you could hear that we have some different ingredients in our our ecosystem. And it probably stems from the fact that the universities weren't conceived of as research universities. We don't get that cross funding between private sector investment in university research centers. We just don't have that model here. So what are some options maybe to separate the role of entrepreneur and inventor in an ecosystem where we don't necessarily know where the inventors are?
So there's two parts to this. One is it's related to do your faculty do some research, and I've worked with universities in Guatemala, University de Valle de Guatemala, well as
De Valle.
De Valle. I'm sorry, my phone. And universities in Colombia, Pontifical University of Javeriana, Bogota and Cali, and La Sabana, Universidad de La Sabana. And I found that they do have really brilliant people, bright individuals, where a lot of the innovation is coming. There's these two places. One is the faculty that are doing research. There's a few of them, as well as the medical school. Those are the two areas. And there are innovations, and it really becomes a function of training those faculty to recognize what is an invention, giving them the confidence that they're willing to spend their time. I mean, why would they spend their time if we're not going to do anything with the invention? They've got to be confident that if they spend their time to come up with the invention, to write it down, to have it, that the university is going to do something with it. So there's that one piece of it.
Or could I ask then, James, why would they do it? And then give it away, so to speak, to some outside entrepreneurs and investors. So there's been kind of a wall, a kind of a firewall, so to speak, between university research and the marketplace.
Yes.
Right.
What I would suggest is that the university creates something like the Idea Center. If they have the people that are helping to shepherd that innovation, and when they transfer it to the outside, the university gets a piece of equity. The university gets a royalty, receives a royalty on the sales of that particular product. So now the market and the university are aligned in their incentives. If the market is successful, the company is successful, the university is successful. And then the university would have a policy that states any revenue that's received from the successful commercialization of this invention would be shared with the faculty. That's one piece of it. And working with those universities, I've seen some really exciting technologies that I really see value in. And I'm working with these universities now to try to start companies. That's one piece of it. But that's not all of it. I also think there's another opportunity, and that we work with the market. We ask the market to share with us the needs that they have. Now, there's going to be some trust that's going to have to be established, but work with the market, they share the needs, and then you take those needs to the faculty who could come up with the innovations, and then you build out the invention, you solve the need, and together with the company and the university, start the company, start the new entity to commercialize that innovation. So think of it like a startup studio where you start with the problem rather than with the solution. So in faculty research, they primarily come up with the solution and you're trying to validate the problem. Now with this model, you start with the problem and then have the faculty build a solution. We've done this at the University of Notre Dame about 7 times now, six times now, and it's working really well. And we're building a process around it. We partner with local companies. They'll bring us their major problems. What's great is they will often say, once it's built, they'll buy the product. And if the company does well, they'll buy the company.
So Marcelo, coming back to our ecosystem, and you've had experience looking at types of incubators that James is referring to, those that are connected to the university system, those that are independent of it, those that have these kind of pitches with corporate partners. What have you seen from what James comments that works within our ecosystem?
Well, I would say that we are also lacking the last part of the value chain in that entrepreneurial process, that is funding. Because when you start a new company in a university, or let's say without a university, you are looking for some kind of scaling up, those kind of things. So the eternal problem that we have in our countries is, okay, we have a company or we have a startup now, what are we doing with that? Okay, so people they have not enough incentives, between quotes, in order to take the risk and to go further on. I think in those countries like United States, US, Europe, and so on, that problem is not a big problem. There is also always a continuity of the funding process for companies. So we have different part of the ecosystem, beginning on the trust issue, and then in the funding issue, that limits our capability and our potential to grow and to be a real, dynamic entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we need to solve different, as you see, different types of problems in that puzzle in order to become a dynamic ecosystem. First of all, we need to solve the problem of trust. Secondly, we need to solve the problem of funding, how to go to those markets with some kind of resources. The capability of helping them, it's done. It's okay. We have it. Those are tools. We have the organization and so on, but we lack of those kind of things in order to make it happen.
So, Marcelo, Paul, may I ask a question?
Please, please.
So, Marcelo, I'm wondering, the trust, would that improve with people in process and funding?
Yes, definitely.
So if you had people, process, and funding, that would improve the trust.
Yes.
So it really comes down to people, process, funding.
Yes.
And you mentioned funding's the big gap.
Yes. Yes, funding is a big gap. But you see, also there is a big gap in terms of the concept of entrepreneurship versus innovation, because people are thinking in terms of innovation, but they are forgetting that the first link of the value chain is the person. So entrepreneurship is the human dimension of the innovation. So we cannot have innovation without a mindset, an entrepreneurial mindset. But because only an entrepreneur can take the innovation to the market. So that's a second problem that has to do with the trust. It's a human concept that we need to build here, because people think in terms of market fit and time to market and so on, but they forget about that first link, that is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is everything. So we need to build that kind of entrepreneurial mindset in those universities, because everybody, and we always said it here in Costa Rica, at least, everybody that enters the university wants to be an employee in a public sector. Yeah. So that's very sad. And that's the problem that we have in terms of convincing people and making the awareness that the entrepreneurship mindset is an agent of change in our countries.
Yes.
So that's the main concern in terms of those two parts of the value chain: the first part of the value chain and the last part of the value chain. So we have no beginning and we have no end. So in the middle, we try, but there's a problem, you see?
So James, in your case, your entrepreneurs, again, are students.
Yes, sir.
Right? So there's a couple questions around that. First is, why do we trust inexperienced young people with no real business savvy to become entrepreneurs? Aren't they the worst suited to do this? And secondly, what motivates them to do it? Why don't they want to just study something and go get a good corporate job?
Right. So to answer your first question, why the students? They were all we had at the beginning. There was no other alternative. We had to Marcelo's point, we had to start with something. So we started with something. We started with the students. And by the way, the model is that we put around them mentors, the board of directors that can help them and guide them. Now, why would they want to do this? It really is what their vision of success is. They're seeing their vision of success, what their family members have done. They see it in the press, on TV. they see entrepreneurship as a way to make money.
Yeah, culturally, it's pretty acceptable. Nobody wants to go work in the public sector, and that's
right. Right. So I will acknowledge that culturally, an entrepreneur is considered fun, exciting.
It's sexy. It's sexy.
Yes, it is. It really is. And that's because they can see it. They know people. I think that you will have to work with those students who have the examples of entrepreneurship. There are people there. You will likely have to work with those who are from the entrepreneurial families, more well-to-do families first. Then they'll see these are people, because these are individuals who they've seen their parents, their aunts and uncles, their grandparents be successful. And then it's a trickle-down effect. I see it a lot, Paul, Marcelo, like what's the best time to plant a tree? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is now.
That's a great answer. So they are motivated because they do have kind of a cultural context for what success looks like, right? And what about failure? Because in our culture in Central America, Latin America, failure is not really very well regarded. Failures are losers, right?
Yeah.
We don't talk about failure that much. And obviously, you have to have a pretty thick skin as an entrepreneur. And I would think that students would be maybe even, I don't know, more susceptible to being thin-skinned because they haven't had to have those hard knocks yet. They haven't experienced it. And they have a lot of illusions or delusions around what they can achieve. So how do you deal with failure?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. We need to focus. We had to focus on a massive campaign to emphasize that it's okay to fail. So we did this hashtag bold fail. I guess there's hashtags on everything. I don't do anything on social media. That's what I have my kids for. But we went on. We talked to the students. We talked to the faculty. We have stickers that we tell people about. We tell them it's okay to fail. So we encourage failure. We reinforce it. The biggest problem with the students to be entrepreneurs at Notre Dame, where our students, we have an acceptance rate of usually 8 to 11%. So, out of 100 people that apply, we get 8 to 11. And these are individuals who've never failed. And it was a mind shift. It was a shift in thinking to get them to accept failure. And we're still working on it. But what it takes is, at the center, when we work with the students, we are reminding them it's okay to fail. We have some fun stories that we tell, just fun little anecdotes. And I don't know if we have enough time. If we had enough time, I'd tell my little fun story. But anyway, these are ways to get the students to be thinking it's okay to fail, and it's not about the failure. It's about what you do after. So we talk about differentiating between a strategic fail and an operational tactical fail. A strategic fail is one in which the process, you had laid something out strategically. You thought it was going to work. It didn't. A strategic fail requires a change in strategy. An operational or tactical fail, that's just when you knew what to do, you just didn't do it. That requires forgiveness.
I think we need to hear your story. Is it going to take more than 10 minutes?
Oh, no, it'll only take like maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
Let's hear this story. Yeah.
So this is just the fun anecdote. There was a bird. This bird needed to fly south for the winter. So in South Bend, Indiana, it gets very, very cold. And during the winter, there's snow and ice that forms all over. And this bird was very lazy, didn't want to fly south for the winter where it was warm, and he decided, I'm going to stay in the farmer's field where it's nice and I'm just going to enjoy myself. And all of their friends took off. And that bird was just happy, enjoying themselves. And all of a sudden, a big ice storm came. And it was freezing rain. And as the rain would come down, it would freeze on everything. And the bird was just so cold. The bird realized, oh, damn, I need to be flying south. So made a mistake. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to fly south. So the bird gets up, starts flying. Well, as the bird is flying, their wings start to ice up. It's like, great, my wings are icing up. What do I do? And he's trying as hard as they possibly can, everything possibly can, but he just can't make it. And soon his wings ice up and he crashes into a farmer's field, into the next farmer's field. And he's like, great, I crashed into the farmer's field. I'm going to die here in the middle of this field. This is horrible. All of a sudden, a cow comes up, takes a shit on him. Just boom, and he's like, great, I'm covered in crap. I'm going to die out here in this farmer's field. Great. Well, after a while, the crap is warm. He starts to warm up and he starts to feel pretty good. And his wings start feeling good. And he's thinking, okay, well, you know what? This is actually pretty good. And he gets up and he starts to sing. And a fox comes up, sees him, grabs him, and eats him. The moral of the story is, those who get you out of shit aren't necessarily your friends. And those who shit on you aren't your enemies.
I love it. That is a great story. Before we wrap up, I'd like to understand a little bit more of how Notre Dame and the Idea Center has collaborated with these other universities that you mentioned. Is there a model of collaboration between the Idea Center and other universities, or how does that happen?
Absolutely. We feel that we have an okay process. Our process is good. It's not great. And we would love to partner with any university. We will give our protocols. So we have standard operating procedures. We have standard documents, and we're putting together these videos, training videos. We will share them with anyone. We've also set up collaborations with not only universities in Guatemala, as well as in Colombia, but in Nigeria, and Algeria, Jamaica, and we're adding a few other countries as well. We also work with universities here in the United States. It's all about sharing best practice, opportunities for us to learn from you and from you to learn from us. It really is a true interchange. So we're not competitive with you, you're not competitive with us. Let's work together to try to help things and make it better. I have found by working with universities in Latin America specifically, which I love to work with universities in Latin America. It's so fun to me. In a month, I'm heading to Panama. I learn so much, and our process gets better by us doing this collaboration.
And can I ask, what does a good matching university look like for this project? Like what kinds of universities? Are we talking the big state schools? Are we talking about the private universities? What would that look like?
What it really looks like is a university that's dedicated to doing entrepreneurship. They really want to do it. There's top-down support for it. It doesn't mean you have to have a lot of money, but at least there's top-down support. And there's dedicated individuals that are there to help to foster entrepreneurship, whether this is the Student Entrepreneurship Group or the Tech Transfer Office. That's really what success looks like. That's what we're looking for in a good university. And the other piece of that, though, is that they're willing to implement, to test, to try to do something different. You don't have to do what we do, but you got to do something different if you're going to expect different results.
That's excellent. Marcelo, in our case, in Central America case, and in your experience, Parque Tec is really probably the leader in the region in incubation. What works in our ecosystem? We've talked a lot about, the pieces that are often missing, but that's not always the story. So in the cases where it works, what works and how does it work here?
Oh, well, I think we have a very important investment that we did in education, and that's a very basic thing in terms of potential. But the problem, as I always say, we are not getting a return of that investment in terms of entrepreneurship and so on. But I think that the cloud, the globalization, and so on, boundless helps a lot for our people in order to go to the entrepreneurial mindset. I think that there are a lot of tools now that we can use. So I think that those are the potentials that we have now, yes.
So the context has changed, sort of the globalization of certain kinds of technology, the access to the cloud. The marketplace is now global.
For sure. We are looking at the entrepreneurship process as a global process now.
Yeah.
So it's very, very encouraging to see people that they can connect with a lot of technologies wherever they are. So now Costa Rica, Central America, so there is no such a, there is no such a very a place like this is local, and we are focused on that, yes.
Yeah. So the idea of density that you mentioned earlier, James, is that changing? The fact that you don't necessarily have in a specific geographical area all of the pieces for the density equation that you had mentioned early on. Can we achieve density through digital means here in our region?
Possible.
There's nothing like face-to-face though, right? Having them sweat it out together.
Exactly. I really think it's going to be challenging for the investors.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be challenging for the investors to want to put dollars in and to really get it started, to make it just digital. My humble opinion, I think you're going to have to start with a geographic area, limited geography, a large city, and try to facilitate those interactions.
Very good.
That's me. That's my humble opinion.
So, Renee, we've covered a lot of territory in our conversation. Was there anything else, Renee, that you wanted us to touch on from the perspective of the work that you've been doing in Empresomos, with INCAI, with the Cámara de Tecnologías, CAMTIC?
Well, to be honest with you, this has been a learning experience of a first quality for me. And I truly appreciate James' perspectives, Marcelo's perspectives, and your fantastic moderation, Paul. Indeed. No, it was really great. And one of the things that we want to cultivate with Empresomos and with your support, Paul, etc., is those synergies, right? Of, knowledge and know-how and know what, etc. And this is one of our goals. So, and I have the feeling that there is, there are the ingredients for that synergy, between you all in the future. And that's, one of our key objectives. So this is really great.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Renee has said. James and Marcelo, I think I really learned a lot. It was a dense hour of learning for me. I had some misconceptions. I even made notes for my own company as you guys were talking. So there are definitely takeaways that I can imagine bringing to the IT Industry Association that I represent here, because our role, James, is often as a catalyst for change in the ecosystem. So our job is to help incubation happen. One of our strategic objectives is to really create the enabling environment for innovation and startups. We're not going to do it. It's not like we're not going to create the center. We need to create the conditions so that the centers exist, the funding happens, the students are trained, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We want to grow the opportunity of industry, and we can't do it if these other pieces aren't present. So that's our objective, and that's why I'm here at the table. I really appreciate your insights, James. Marcelo, as always, it's a pleasure. Your leadership in the region has always been sterling, and I appreciate it greatly. So from my part, thank you both very much for your collaboration. And Renee, thanks for establishing the space.
No, absolutely. And just let me say thank you to everyone in Spanish, okay? To close. Bueno, muchas gracias a James Thompson, Marcelo Lebendiker y Paul Fervoy por esta interesante y estimulante diálogo e intercambio de ideas sobre procesos de incubación y aceleración de empresas. que es parte de nuestro programa Conectividad Emprendedora Centroamérica con el apoyo de CAMTIC y de INCAE. También agradecemos la atención de nuestra audiencia y les recordamos que algunos de los temas que estaremos abordando en nuestras próximas entregas con el apoyo de expertos como los que tuvimos el día de hoy son emprendedurismo social, inversión de impacto, franquicias, habilidades y actitudes emprendedoras para el éxito en el mundo moderno, entre otras. Y si están interesados en estos intercambios de conocimiento, los invitamos a suscribirse al canal de Empresomos en YouTube. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Thank you very much, James, Marcelo, and Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.